You fucking my freaking Opal, my sleep mode for Opal went ahead and disabled the camera because, you know, I'm recording this past midnight. So, got fucked up right there. Alright, let's keep going. Where were we? Log entry Soul 26. Okay. By the way, I made camera an exception to the sleep mode, so hopefully it doesn't re-disable it. It was a backbreaking yet productive day. I was sick of thinking, so instead of trying to figure out where I'll get 250 liters of water, I just got a notification. I did some manual labor. I'll need to get a whole buttload more soil into the hab, even if it is dry and useless right now. I got a cubic meter in before getting exhausted. Done. A minor dust storm dropped by for an hour and covered the solar collectors with crap, so I had to suit up again and do another EVA. I was in a nasty mood the whole time. Sweeping off a whole huge field of solar cells is boring and physically demanding. But once the job was done, I came back to my little hab on the prairie. It was about time for another dirt doubling, so I figured I might as well get it over with. It took an hour. One more doubling and the usable soil will be good to go. It was about time for another dirt doubling, so I figured I might as well get it over with. It took an hour. One more doubling and the usable soil will all be good to go. Also, I figured it was time to start up a seed crop. I doubled the soil enough that I could afford to leave a little corner of it alone. I had 12 potatoes to work with. I'm just lucky they aren't freeze-dried or mulched. Why did NASA send 12 whole potatoes, refrigerated but not frozen? And why send them along with us and then as in-pressure cargo, rather than in a crate with the rest of the hab supplies? Because Thanksgiving was going to happen while we were doing surface operations, and NASA's shrinks thought it would be good for us to make a meal together. Not just to eat it, but to actually prepare it. There's probably some logic to that, but who cares? Calling NASA shrinks, that's funny. I cut each potato into 4 pieces, making sure each piece had at least 2 eyes. The eyes are where they sprout from. I let them sit for a few hours to harden a bit, then planted them, well spaced apart in the corner. Godspeed, little taters. My life depends on you. That's a fucking cringe-ass line. Normally, it takes at least 90 days to yield full-size potatoes, but I can't wait that long. I'll need to cut up all the potatoes from this crop to seed the rest of the field. By setting the hob temperature to a balmy 25.5 degrees Celsius, I can make the plants grow faster. Also, the internal lights will provide plenty of sunlight, and I'll make sure they get lots of water once I figure out where to get water. There will be no foul weather, or any parasites to hassle them, or any weeds to compete with for soil and nutrients. With all this going for them, they should yield healthy, sproutable tubers within 40 days. I figured that was enough being Farmer Mark for one day. A full meal for dinner. I've earned it. Plus, I had burned a ton of calories and I wanted them back. I rifled through Commander Lewis's stuff until I found her personal data stick. Everybody got to bring whatever digital entertainment they wanted, and I was tired of listening to Johansson's Beatles albums for now. Time to see what Lewis had. Crappy TV shows, that's what she had. Countless entire runs of TV shows from forever ago. Well, beggars can't be choosers. Three's Company it is. Commander Lewis has got a data stick, eh? I wonder where she puts that. Sure gets plenty of data. Log entry Soul 29. Over the last few days, I got in all the dirt that I'll need. I prepped the tables and bunks for holding the weight of soil and even put the dirt in place. There's still no water to make it viable, but I have some ideas. Really bad ideas, but they're ideas. Today's big accomplishment was setting up the pop tents. The problem with the rover's pop tents is that they weren't designed for frequent use. The idea was you'd throw out a pop tent, get in, and wait for rescue. The airlock is nothing but in valves and two doors. Equalize your airlock with your side of it. Equalize the airlock with your side of it. Get in. Equalize with the other side. Get out. That means you lose a lot of air with each use, and I'll need to get in there at least once a day. The total volume of each pop tent is pretty low, so I can't afford to lose air from it. I spent hours trying to figure out how to attach a pop tent airlock to a hob airlock. I have 3 airlocks in the lab. I'd be willing to dedicate 2 to pop tents. That would have been awesome. The frustrating part is pop tent airlocks can attach to other airlocks. You might have injured people in there, or not enough spacesuits. Oh. You might have injured people in there, or not enough spacesuits. You need to be able to get people out without exposing them to the Martian atmosphere. But the pop tents were designed for your crewmates to come rescue you in a rover. The airlocks on the hob are much larger and completely different from the airlocks on the rovers. When you think about it, there's really no reason to attach a pop tent to the hob. Unless you're stranded on Mars, everyone thinks you're dead, and you're in a desperate fight against time and the elements to stay alive. But, other than that edge case, there's no reason. So I finally decided I'd just take the hit. I'll be losing some air every time I enter or exit a pop tent. The good news is each pop tent has an air feed valve on the outside. Remember, these are emergency shelters. The occupants might need air, and you can provide it from a rover by hooking up an air line. It's nothing more than a tube that equalizes the rover's air with the pop tents. The hob and the rovers use the same valve and tubing standards, so I was able to attach the pop tents directly to the hob. That'll automatically replenish the air I lose with my entries and exits. NASA was not messing around with these emergency tests. The moment I pushed the panic button in the rover, there was an ear-popping whoosh as the pop tent fired out, attached to the rover airlock. It took about 2 seconds. I closed the airlock from the rover side and ended up with a nice isolated pop tent. Setting up the equalizer hose was trivial. For once I'm using equipment the way it was designed to be used. Then, after a few trips through the airlock, where the air loss automatically equalized by the hob, I got the dirt in. Sigh, ... water. In high school, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. You may not have guessed this. Botanist, mechanical engineer was a bit of a nerd in high school, but indeed I was. In the game, I played a cleric, One of the magic spells I could cast was create water. I always thought it was a really stupid spell, and I never used it. Boy, what I wouldn't give to be good to be able to do that in real life right now. It's probably... never mind. Anyways, that's a problem for tomorrow. For tonight, I have to get back to Three's Company. I stopped last night in the middle of the episode where Mr. Roper saw something and took it out of context. Okay, log entry, Soul 30. I have an idiotically dangerous plan for getting the water I need, and boy do I mean dangerous. But I don't have much choice. I'm out of ideas, and I'm due for another dirt doubling in a few days. When I do the final doubling, I'll be doubling onto all that new soil I brought in. If I don't wet it first, it'll just die. There isn't a lot of water here on Mars. There's ice in the poles, but there's too far away. If I want water, I'll have to make it from scratch. Fortunately, I know the recipe. Take hydrogen, add oxygen, and burn. Let's take them one at a time. I'll start with oxygen. I have a fair bit of O2 reserves, but not enough to make 250 liters of water. 2 high-pressure tanks at one end of the hab are my entire supply, plus the air in the hob, of course. They each contain 25 liters of liquid O2. The hob would use them only in an emergency. It has the oxygenator to balance the atmosphere. The reason the O2 tanks are here is to feed the spacesuits and rovers. Anyways, the reserve oxygen would only be enough to make 100 liters of water. That would mean no EVAs for me and no emergency reserves. And it would make less than half of the water I need. Out of the question. But oxygen's easier to find on Mars than you might think. The atmosphere is 95% CO2, and I happen to have a machine whose sole purpose is liberating oxygen from CO2. One problem, the atmosphere is very thin, less than 1% of the pressure on Earth, so it's hard to collect. Getting air from outside to inside is nearly impossible. The whole purpose of the hob is to keep that sort of thing from happening. The tiny amount of Martian atmosphere that enters when I use an airlock is laughable. That's where the MAV fuel plant comes in. My crewmates took away the MAV weeks ago, but the bottom half of it stayed behind. NASA isn't in the habit of putting unnecessary mass into orbit. The landing gear, ingress ramp, and fuel plant are still here. Remember how the MAV made its own fuel with help from the Martian atmosphere? Step 1 of that is to collect CO2 and store it in a high-pressure vessel. Once I get the fuel plant hooked up to the hob's power, it'll give me half a liter of liquid CO2 per hour indefinitely. After 10 souls, it'll have made 125 liters of CO2, which will make 125 liters of O2 after I feed it to the oxygenator. That's enough to make 250 liters of water, so I have a plan for oxygen. The hydrogen will be a little trickier. I considered raiding the hydrogen fuel cells, but I need those batteries to maintain power at night. If I don't have that, it'll get too cold. I could bundle up, but the cold would kill my crops, and each fuel cell has only a small amount of H2 anyways. It's just not worth sacrificing so much usefulness for so little gain. The one thing I have going for me is that energy is not a problem. I don't want to give that up. So I'll have to go a different route. I often talk about the MAV, but now I want to talk about the MDV. During the most terrifying 23 minutes of my life, 4 of my crewmates and I tried not to puke while Martinez plodded the MDV down to the surface. It was kind of like being in a tumble dryer. First, we descended from Hermes and decelerated our orbital velocity so we could start falling properly. Everything was smooth until we hit the atmosphere. If you think turbulence is rough in a jetliner going 720 kilometers per hour, just imagine what it's like at 28,000 kilometers per hour. Several staged sets of chutes deployed automatically to slow our descent. Then Martinez manually piloted us to the ground, using the thrusters to slow descent and control our lateral motion. He trained for this for years, and he did his job extraordinarily well. He exceeded all plausible expectations of landing, putting us just 9 meters from the target. The guy just plain owned the landing. Thanks, Martinez, you may have saved my life. Not because of the perfect landing, but because he left so much fuel behind. Hundreds of liters of unused hydrazine. Each molecule of hydrazine has 4 hydrogen atoms in it, so each liter of hydrazine has enough hydrogen for 2 liters of water. I did a little EVA data check. The MDV has 292 liters of juice left in the tanks, enough to make almost 600 liters of water, way more than I even need. There's just one catch. Liberating hydrogen from hydrazine is, well, it's how rockets work. It's really, really hot and dangerous. If I do it in an oxygen atmosphere, the hot and newly liberated hydrogen will explode. There will be a lot of H2O at the end, but I'll be too dead to appreciate it. At its root, hydrazine is pretty simple. The Germans used it far back as World War II for the rocket-assisted fighter fuel, and occasionally blew themselves up with it. All you have to do is run it over a catalyst, which I can extract from the MDV engine, and it will turn into nitrogen and hydrogen. I'll spare you the chemistry, but the end result is that 5 molecules of hydrogen becomes 5 molecules of harmless N2 and 10 molecules of lovely H2. During this process, it goes through an intermediate step of being ammonia. Chemistry, being the sloppy pain in the butt it is, ensures there will be some ammonia that doesn't react with the hydrogen, so it will just stay ammonia. You like the smell of ammonia? Well, it will be prevalent in my increasingly hellish existence. The chemistry is on my side. The question now is, how do I actually make the reaction happen slowly, and how do I collect the hydrogen? The answer is, I don't know. I suppose I'll think of something, or die. Anyways, much more important, I simply can't abide the replacement of Chrissy with Cindy. Three's company may never be the same after this fiasco. Time will tell. Do I want to do chapter 4? Oh, it's very short. Okay, sure. Well, I think it's kind of the same size as... it's even shorter than chapter 3. I was gonna say all the chapters are the same, but it seems lab 4 is... fucking... Okay, let's go. Now, chapter 4, and then I'll go to sleep. Log entry, Sol 32. What was the last day? 30. Okay, so 2 days later. So I ran into a bunch of problems with my water plan. My idea is to make 600 liters of water, limited by the hydrogen I can get from the hydrazine. That means I'll need 300 liters of liquid O2. I can create the O2 easily enough. It takes 20 hours for the MAV fuel plant to fill its 10-liter tank with CO2. The oxygenator can turn it into O2, then the atmospheric regulator will see the O2 content in the HAB is high and pull it out of the air, storing it in the main O2 tanks. They'll fill up, so I'll have to transfer O2 over to the rover's tanks and even the spacesuit tanks as necessary. But I can't create it very quickly. At half a liter of CO2 per hour, it'll take 25 days to make the oxygen I need. That's longer than I'd like. Also, there's a problem with storing the hydrogen. The air tanks of the HAB, the rovers, and the spacesuits all add up to exactly 374 liters of storage. To hold all the materials for water, I would need a whopping 900 liters of storage. I considered using one of the rovers as a tank. It would certainly be big enough, but it just isn't designed to hold in that much pressure. It's made to hold our atmosphere. It's made to hold one atmosphere. I need vessels that can hold 50 times that much. I'm sure a rover would burst. The best way is to store the ingredients of water is to make them be water. So that's what I'll have to do. The concept is simple, but the execution will be incredibly dangerous. Every 20 hours, I'll have 10 liters of CO2 thanks to the MAV fuel plant. I'll vent it into the HAB via the highly scientific method of detaching the tank from the MAV landing struts, bringing it into the HAB, and then opening the valve until it's empty. The oxygenator will turn it into oxygen in its own time. Then I'll release hydrazine very slowly over the iridium catalyst to turn it into N2 and H2. I'll direct the hydrogen to a small area and burn it. As you can see, this plant provides many opportunities for me to die in a fiery explosion. Firstly, hydrazine is some serious death. If I make any mistakes, there will be nothing left but the Mark Watney Memorial Crater where the HAB once stood. Presuming I don't screw up with the hydrazine, there will still be the matter of burning hydrogen. I'm going to be setting a fire in the HAB on purpose. If you asked every engineer at NASA what the worst scenario for the HAB was, they'd all answer fire. If you asked them what the result would be, they'd answer death by fire. But if I can pull it off, I'll be making water continuously, with no need to store hydrogen or oxygen. It will be mixed into the atmosphere as humidity, but the water reclaimer will pull it out. I don't even have to perfectly match the hydrogen end of it with the fuel plant CO2 part. There's plenty of oxygen in the HAB, and plenty more in reserve. I just need to make sure not to make so much water I run myself out of O2. I hooked up the MAV fuel plant to the HAB's power supply. Fortunately, they both use the same voltage. It's chugging away, collecting CO2 for me. Half ration for dinner. All I accomplished today was thinking up a plan that'll kill me, and that doesn't take much energy. I'm going to finish off the last of Three's company tonight. Frankly, I like Mr. Furley more than the Ropers. Log entry Sol 33. This may be my last entry. I've known since Sol 6 there was a good chance I'd die here, but I'd figure it would be when I ran out of food. I didn't think it would be this early. I'm about to fire up the hydrazine. Our mission was designed knowing that anything might need maintenance, so I have plenty of tools. Even in a spacesuit, I was able to pry the access panels off the MDV and get at the 6 hydrazine tanks. I set them in the shadow of a rover to keep them from heating up too much. There's more shade and a cooler temperature near the hob, but that would be a bad idea. If they're going to blow up, they can blow up a rover, not my house. Then I pried out the reaction chamber. It took some work and I cracked the stupid thing in half, but I got it out. Luckily for me, I don't need a proper fuel reaction. In fact, I really super duper don't want a proper fuel reaction. I brought the reaction chamber in. I briefly considered only bringing 1 tank of hydrazine in at a time to reduce risk, but some back of the napkin math told me that even 1 tank was enough to blow the whole hob up. So I brought them all in. Why not? The tanks have manual vent valves. I'm not 100% sure what they're for. Certainly we were never expected to use them. I think they're to release pressure during the many quality checks done during construction and before fueling. Whatever the reason, I have valves to work with. All it takes is a wrench. I liberated a spare water hose from the water reclaimer. With some thread torn out of a uniform, sorry Johansson, I attached it to the valve output. Hydrazine is a liquid, so all I have to do is lead it up to the reaction chamber. More of a reaction bowl now. Meanwhile, the MAV fuel plant is still working. I've already brought in 1 tank of CO2, vented it, and returned it for refilling. So there are no more excuses. It's time to start making water. If you find the charred remains of the hob, it means I did something wrong. I'm copying this log over to both rovers, so it's more likely it'll survive. Here goes nothing. Log entry Sol 33-2. Well, I didn't die. First thing I did was put on the inner lining of my EVA suit. Not the bulky suit itself, just the inner clothing I wear under it, including the gloves and booties. Then I got an oxygen mask from the medical supplies and some lab goggles from Vogel's chem kit. Almost all my body was protected and I was breathing canned air. Why? Because hydrazine is very toxic. If I breathe too much of it, I'll get major lung problems. If I get on my skin, I'll have chemical burns for the rest of my life. I wasn't taking any chances. I turned on the valve until a trickle of hydrazine came out. I let 1 drop fall into the iridium bowl. It undramatically sizzled and disappeared. But hey, that's what I wanted. I just freed up hydrogen and nitrogen. Yay. Yay. One thing I have in abundance here are bags. They're not much different from kitchen trash bags, though I'm sure they cost $50,000 because of NASA. Another jab at NASA. In addition to being our commander, Lewis was also the geologist. She was going to collect rock and soil samples from all over the operational area. Weight limits restricted how much she could actually bring back to Earth, so she was going to collect first, then sort out the most interesting 50 kilograms to take home. The bags were to store and tag the samples. Some are smaller than a Ziploc, while others are big as a hefty lawn and leaf bag. Also, I have duct tape, ordinary duct tape, like you buy at a hardware store. Turns out even NASA can't improve on duct tape. I cut up a few hefty-sized bags and taped them together to make a sort of tent. Really, it was more of a supersized bag. I was able to cover the whole table where my hydrogen mad scientist setup was. I put a few knickknacks on the table to keep the plastic out of the iridium bowl. Thankfully, the bags are clear so I can still see what's going on. Next, I sacrificed a spacesuit to the cause. Not the spacesuit, come on. I needed an air base. I needed an air hose, sorry. I have a surplus of spacesuits after all, a total of 6, one for each crew member, so I don't mind murdering one of them. What's this about murder? I cut a hole in the top of the plastic and duct taped the hose in place. Nice seal, I think. With some more string from Johansson's clothing, I hung the other end of the hose from the top of the I hung the other end of the hose from the top of the Hobbs dome by 2 angled threads to keep them well clear of the hose's opening. Now I had a little chimney. The hose was about 1 centimeter wide, hopefully a good aperture. The hydrogen will be hot after the reaction, and it'll want to go up, so I'll let it go up the chimney and then burn as it comes out. Then I had to invent fire. NASA put a lot of effort into making sure nothing here can burn. Everything is made of metal or flame-retardant plastic, and the uniforms are synthetic. I needed something that could hold a flame, some kind of pilot light. I don't have the skills to keep enough H2 flowing to feed a flame without killing myself. Too narrow a margin there. After a search of everyone's personal items, I found my answer. Martinez is a devout Catholic. I knew that. What I didn't know was he brought along a small wooden cross. I'm sure NASA gave him grief about it, but I also know Martinez is stubborn. I chipped his sacred religious item into long splinters, using a pair of pliers and a screwdriver. Wow. I figured if there's a God, he wouldn't mind, considering the situation I'm in. That's gotta be symbolic for something. Chopping up a cross, brother. If ruining the only religious icon I have leaves me vulnerable to Martian vampires, I'll have to risk it. Yeah, that's definitely a message. There were plenty of wires and batteries around to make a spark, but you can't just ignite wood with a small electric spark, so I collected ribbons of bark from local palm trees. Then got a couple of sticks and rubbed them together to create enough friction to... No, not really. I vented pure oxygen at the stick and gave it a spark. It lit up like a match. With my mini torch in hand, I started a slow hydrogen flow. It sizzled on the iridium and disappeared. Soon I had short bursts of flame sputtering from the chimney. The main thing I had to watch was the temperature. Hydrogen breaking down is extremely exothermic, so I did it a bit at a time, constantly watching the readout of a thermocouple I detached the iridium chamber. Point is, the process worked. Each hydrazine tank holds a little over 50 liters, which would be enough to make 100 liters of water. I'm limited by my oxygen production, but I'm all excited now, so I'm willing to use half my reserves. Long story short, I'll stop when the tank is half empty, and I'll have 50 liters of water at the end. Three pages left. Log entry Sol 34. Well, that took a really long time. I've been at it all night with the hydrazine, but I got the job done. I could have finished faster, but I figured caution's best when setting fire to rocket fuel in an enclosed space. Boy, is this place a tropical jungle now, I'll tell you. It is about 30 degrees in here, and humid as all hell. I just dumped a ton of heat and 50 liters of water into the air. During this process, the poor hob had to be the mother of a messy toddler. It's been replacing the oxygen I've used, and the water reclaimer is trying to get the humidity down to sane levels. Nothing to be done about the heat. There's actually no air conditioning in the hob. Mars is cold. Getting rid of excess heat isn't something we expected to deal with. I've now grown accustomed to hearing the alarms blare at all times. The fire alarm has finally stopped now that there's no fire. Now that there's no more fire. The low oxygen alarm should stop soon. The high humidity alarm will take a little longer. The water reclaimer had its work cut out for it today. For a moment there was yet another alarm. The water reclaimer's main tank was full. Booyah, that's the kind of problem I want to have. Remember the spacesuit I vandalized yesterday? I hung it on its rack and carried buckets of water to it from the reclaimer. It can hold an atmosphere of air in. It should be able to handle a few buckets of water. Man, I'm tired. Been up all night and it's time to sleep. But I'll drift off to dreamland in the best mood I've been in since Sol 6. Things are finally going my way. In fact, they're going great. I have a chance to live after all. What do you think, guys? Do you think his fortunes will continue in log entry Sol 37? Oh, I'm just looking at the first line. It says, I am screwed and I'm gonna die. Okay, calm down. I'm sure I can get around this. Are you though? I'm writing this log to you, dear future Mars archaeologist from Rover 2. You may wonder why I'm not in the hob right now. Because I fled in terror, that's why. And I'm not sure what to do next. I guess I should explain what happened. If this is my last entry, you'll at least know why. Oh my god, this guy is very verbose in his log entries, and he's mentioned dying at least 10 separate times by now, to the point where I've grown desensitized to my own death. Over the past few days, I've been happily making water. It's been going swimmingly. I even beefed up the mild fuel plant compressor, but it was very technical, so I'm making water even faster now. After my initial burst of 50 liters, I decided to settle down and just make it at the rate I get O2. I'm not willing to go below a 25-liter reserve. So when I dip too low, I stop messing with hydrogen until I get the O2 back up to well above 50 liters. Important note. When I say I made 50 liters of water, that's an assumption. I didn't reclaim 50 liters of water. The additional soil I'd filled the hob with was extremely dry and greedily sucked up a lot of the humidity. That's where I want the water to go anyway, so I'm not worried, and I wasn't surprised when the reclaimer didn't get anywhere near 50 liters. I get 10 liters of CO2 every 15 hours now that I've souped up the pump. I've done this process 4 times. My math tells me that, including my initial 50 liter burst, I should have added 130 liters of water to the system. Well, my math lied. I had gained 70 liters in the water reclaimer and the spacesuit turned water tank. There's plenty of condensation on the walls and domed roof, and the soil is certainly absorbing its fair share. But that doesn't account for 60 liters of missing water. Something was wrong. That doesn't account for oh, sorry, I already spoke that. That's when I noticed the other O2 tank. The hub has 2 reserve O2 tanks, one on each side of the structure for safety reasons. The hub can decide which one to use whenever it wants. Turns out it's been topping off the atmosphere from tank 1, but when I add O2 to the system, the hub evenly distributes the gain between the 2 tanks. Tank 2 has been slowly gaining oxygen. That's not a problem. The hub is just doing its job, but it does mean I've been gaining O2 over time, which means I'm not consuming it as fast as I thought. That's not a problem. Sorry, I made that. I did that line already. As first, I thought, yay, more oxygen. Now I can make water faster. But then the more disturbing thought occurred to me. Follow my logic. I'm gaining O2, but the amount I'm bringing in from outside is constant. So the only way to gain it is to be using less than I thought. But I've been doing the hydrazine reaction with the assumption that I was using all of it. What? The only possible explanation is that I haven't been burning all the released hydrogen. It's obvious now in retrospect, but it never occurred to me that some of the hydrogen just wouldn't burn. It got past the flame and went on its merry way. Damn it, Jim, I'm a botanist, not a chemist. Chemistry is messy, so there's unburned hydrogen in the air, all around me, mixed in with the oxygen, just hanging out, waiting for a spark so it can blow the hob up. Once I figured this out and composed myself, I got a Ziploc-sized sample bag and waved it about a bit, then sealed it. Then a quick EVA to a rover where we keep the atmospheric analyzers. Nitrogen 22%, oxygen 9%, hydrogen 64%. I've been hiding here in the rover ever since. It's Hydrogenville in the hob. I'm very lucky it hasn't blown. Even a small static discharge would have led to my own private Hindenburg. So I'm here in rover 2. I can stay for a day or 2. Before the CO2 filters from the rover and my spacesuit fill up. I have that long to figure out how to deal with this. The hob is now a bomb. Alright, let's go to sleep, shall we?